I just have to start by saying I loved the two of you together in this movie. It is so fun and spooky and sexy. And I feel like it's kind of everything you want out of like a modern Gothic tale. I would love to ask how the two of you kind of joined the project. Natalie, Evie is someone who feels like a breath of fresh air in this movie. You know, she's a modern heroine who gets kind of dropped into a different time with different traditions, I would say is probably the right way of putting it. What initially drew you to the part?
Yeah, I loved the kind of the clash of those kind of two worlds. You know, she's a very modern woman. But I really was drawn to the idea of, in a way, like this feminist sort of retelling of a Dracula story, which is obviously a very old, very well known story, and what would happen if you placed someone very very modern in that context. Like, it's immediately just like really interesting for all the reasons. But you know, as a creative myself, like I kind of was drawn to Evie's sort of artist struggle, and you know, like that sort of curiosity as well about family history, you know, and the sort of not so great parts of it, but also they're just a part of your story. And you know, and this is like worst case scenario of what happens when you find out. So I just was immediately just drawn to the characters, like handling of that, but also just the sort of context is just a lot of fun as well.
Thomas, Walter has a lot of layers as a character. I don't think that's an over exaggeration. And we get to see those gradually peel back over the course of this movie. So, what were you most excited to kind of get to dig into and explore in him?
I think it's really fun to like. I love just playing characters. I love the extremities of human behavior and the possibilities. And one thing that I love is that I feel like we all do possess the capability or the capacity to be sociopathic or enlightened and saintly. Um, and a lot of that's determined by environment. So I do have a lot of empathy for human beings generally. I think there's a lot of conditioning, and I mean, although Walter is absolutely insane and evil, um, I think it is important still to find that empathy in that character. Um, doesn't excuse any responsibility, but definitely to find that the humanity in that. And so I guess just toying with that, playing with that, having it was almost like I was doing a film and I got to play two different characters, which was fun. Um, and the one thing that I did a lot with when I was playing Good Walter, I like was clenching my jaw a lot, and that was one way of the bad Walter kind of being held back. So that was like a little nod to bad Walter in there. But yeah, no, it was really good fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
I'm glad that you brought up kind of he feels like two different characters in the sense that I think you both get to play the romance of their relationship before the horror starts. Like it's a very clear
Yeah.
delineation between the two, which I thought was really fascinating. And I guess this is for both of you. What did you try to focus on in terms of how your character's relationship changes and evolves to kind of embrace that darker side later in the movie?
I think, well, Jess was so good at
Mm.
kind of helping us build intimacy from the beginning. And I think what Thomas was saying about the humanity of Walt, you know, he's a very expert kind of charmer, you know, manipulator. And I think that he can see Evie's real vulnerability and like, you know, needing to be the sort of savior in a way. And he becomes exactly that, like from the beginning, when he kind of defends her against uh, Sean Pertwee's character. And it's like, so she's immediately just kind of enamored with him because he is the powerful man, and he's like kind of come in and sort of been cool with her, like sort of been done the right thing. And so he kind of becomes this, what she needs him to be.
Mm.
And I think that very quickly that builds intimacy with them. And as she's becoming more and more unsure of herself, unsure of, her instincts and believing her instincts, like he just very, very expertly just makes sure that he is there to kind of like push the narrative or push the events in the direction that he needs. And it's almost so subtle and not kind of apparent until the very last moment. It's almost like the penny drops and it's like too late to even get out. So yeah, it really was, I think, building that intimacy with us from the beginning was like hugely important, because you're just more likely to trust that person that you feel closest to in an environment as well where she knew nobody, but she feels closest to him. And I think that was something that he completely manipulates and exploits.
There are some genuinely terrifying moments in this movie, but I would say the dinner scene is probably the most unsettling for the reason that you mentioned, Natalie, which is the penny drops, right? This is kind of like the big moment. How much preparation did the two of you do for that scene in terms of rehearsal? Was there anything that you kind of really wanted to come through? Because it feels like such a pivotal scene that really hinges on a lot of big reveals and kind of truths coming to the forefront.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was really didn't want to play the like bad guy all of a sudden. Try to get a balance of that. I think there's something really eerie about someone just acting as nonchalantly as if it's like, yeah, and this is what it is and stuff, which I really love. And Natalie's performance really complimented that for me. Her like sheer panic and terror. I always felt for you because you had to do that so many times. That emotional, like, oh my God, and she killed it.
Well, interestingly, the day that we shot that scene, or where like most of the kind of performance happened, my mum was visiting me on set, and the door in which I was banging against trying to get out, my mum was actually set up in had a little sort of monitor and headphones watching, and she was on the other side of that door. And it was amazing how useful that was. And usually like having kind of your loved ones on set isn't always like conducive to like good performance, because it takes you out of the character that you're doing. But there was something about being like, I need to get to the other side of this door and get to my mum, was really like it was like they'd locked the door, they had someone sort of standing behind it, and it was almost like just using that, like I need to get to the person that I love or get out of here to get to that person, was like really useful. And I remember just feeling like devastated, like absolutely devastated and panicked and terrified. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like that day that we did that, my mom was literally on the other side of that door.
God,
and I was a bit like, Mum, you're all right? Afterwards she was like, yeah, didn't like that, didn't like hearing me screaming like that. But yeah, like I think that scene particularly is like she's suddenly confronted with the complete like lack of empathy, the complete coldness of these people, and she is like the realization that she has to fight for herself, because everyone here is like just dark and bad, and yeah, just everything bad. But yeah, I mean, from the second she walks in and sees all these masks and doing all these like kind of cult like hand gestures at each other, I mean, yeah, it was not good.
I think the finished product speaks for itself for sure. Thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to me about this movie. It is so spooky and sexy and fun, and I cannot wait for everyone else to get to see it too. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Lovely speaking to you.